Did you know the US has seen a 40% increase in major winter storms over the past 2 decades, according to the National Weather Service? And NOAA's 2025 forecast warns of extreme swings, freezing rain one week, blizzards the next. Now imagine your power's out, the roads are iced over, and stores are stripped bare in 48 hours. You turn on the heat, nothing. That's not winter, that's survival season. Hey folks, welcome back to Frugal Prepping. This year's weather is already looking unpredictable. Early storms, fuel shortages, and grid warnings across the US. So in this video, we're covering 12 essential items you need before Weird Winter 2025 hits. These aren't luxuries, they're lifesavers. Stick around till the end, because a few of these are the difference between staying safe and freezing in the dark. 1. Backup heat source. When the lights go out and the furnace falls silent, and trust me, it can happen, you'll want a backup heat source you can count on. According to the Energy Information Administration, in recent years, the average U.S. electricity customer experienced about 5 1-2 hours of power interruptions in 2022. What that number doesn't show is how many of those outages occurred during freezing weather, or dragged on long enough to make your home truly unsafe. And it's not just brief outages anymore. Research from 2018-2020 shows U.S. counties experience thousands of outages lasting 8 or more hours, a duration that the researchers flagged as being medically relevant. That means many households have already experienced power loss during critical times. Now imagine winter blasts that knock out power across entire regions, with temperatures plunging into the teens and no way to keep your furnace going. Here's where the what if hits home. Picture this. It's 15-degree weather outside. Your power's been off for 12 hours. And you're inside your house with the thermostat reading the same as the porch. Your breath is fogging in front of you. The heating vents are cold. The blankets you grabbed just aren't cutting it. In that scenario, a wood stove, propane heater with proper ventilation, kerosene heater, any reliable off-grid heat source becomes the most valuable thing you own in that moment. The urgency is real because when temperatures drop, every hour without heat increases risks. Frostbite, hypothermia, frozen pipes, and breakdowns in other systems. The federal guidance from Federal Emergency Management Agency emphasizes that extended outages during extreme weather are a core part of grid failure planning. So here's what you need to ask yourself. Do you have a secondary heating option ready to go? Fuel, ventilation, safety checks done? And if you don't, can you realistically wait until the first major winter storm hits to scramble? Because when things break down, it's not the time to discover you're unprepared. 2. Propane, butane, and fuel is gold when winter puts your back against the wall. And I don't mean metaphorically. Think of the day your vehicle sits in the driveway because the pumps are closed, or the day your heater can't run because delivery trucks can't reach your tank. That's why now, before Weird Winter 2025 hits, is the time to stack up. Take, for example, what happened in 2021 Texas power crisis. In February 2021, millions of Texans lost power and heating during an ice cold spell, due in large part to frozen gas infrastructure and fuel disruptions. When fuel stops flowing, your furnace, your heater, even your car become just decorative. Now imagine your house. The thermostat drops, the windows feel like mirrors again. You watch for frost forming on walls. You reach for that small propane tank you picked up just in case, and suddenly it's the most valuable canister you own. That's what preparedness feels like. According to federal guidance from Federal Emergency Management Agency and the National Association of State Energy Officials, when a winter storm cuts off regular supply chains, heating fuels like propane and delivered petroleum may be curtailed or delayed. And that means homes using alternate fuels must plan ahead. So here's your Real Talk checklist. Get small propane cylinders, pick up butane canisters for portable heaters or stoves, add kerosene if you use it, and don't forget fuel stabilizer for any stored gasoline you may use for generators or vehicles. Because when everyone else is scrambling, lines form, prices spike, stock disappears. You want to be the one ready, not the one standing in the cold. Don't wait till the first major winter storm shows up on the radar and reminds you, uh-oh, I should have acted. Your future self will thank you when the wind howls, the grid creaks, and your lights stay on. 3. Thermal blankets and sleeping bags. Picture this: the lights went dark, the furnace quit, and suddenly your house, which felt cozy just yesterday, starts to feel like a refrigerator. It happens faster than you think. From 2018 to 2020, U.S. counties experienced thousands of power outage days of 8+ hours, with many co-occurring alongside cold weather events. When the heat goes out, your body heat becomes your best defense. Even indoors, without active heating, your core temperature starts dropping. According to medical guidance, early signs of hypothermia, shivering, slurred speech, confusion, can happen even when you're inside doing everything you should. So that high-quality thermal blanket or sleeping bag, rated for below zero, you had in the closet. It's not a luxury. It's survival gear. Let me walk you through a what-if. Imagine a major winter storm knocks out power across your region. The day dawns, and the thermostat hasn't budged above 50 degrees Celsius. By evening, it's dipping into the 30s inside. You and your partner wrap yourselves in your best blankets, but you can still see your breath. You pull out a sub-zero sleeping bag each, throw on your base layers, and light hand warmers tucked into pockets. That extra layer of protection turns your living room into a livable zone instead of a dangerous trap. Now ask yourself, how many people are truly ready when the grid fails and the heat fails along with it? The federal advice for winter outage safety calls out insulation, conservation, and yes, layering your bedding like armor. Because when things go sideways, blankets and sleeping bags might just be your best bet to keep the worst from happening. Don't just hope you'll be warm. Prepare to stay warm. Layer up, gear up, and don't let this winter surprise you. 4. Water and ways to keep it liquid. Imagine the power goes out, the heat shuts down, and you head to the kitchen only to find the faucets still working, for now. But the night gets colder, freezing creeps in, and suddenly you're staring at bottles of water that could turn into solid ice in hours. That's why it's not enough to just stock water. You've got to keep it liquid. The federal guidance from Federal Emergency Management Agency and Ready.gov recommends storing at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for several days. But when the mercury drops and pipes freeze, you've got to think a step ahead. Here's the scenario. It's late January, and a storm shuts down power across your region. Your house dips into the 30s inside, and outside it's below zero. You went out and grabbed 6 1-gallon jugs, stored them in the basement like you always do, but overnight that basement hits freezing. In the morning, those jugs are slushy, half-frozen. You need safe drinking water now. This is when insulated containers make a difference, or having a small camp stove ready to melt snow or ice becomes a game changer. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, during power outages and flooding, you must have a supply of bottled water stored in a safe location. They don't specifically talk about freezing, but the principle remains. When the normal systems fail, you're on your own. So let's talk real. Store bottles indoors, use insulated jugs or thermal containers, and consider having a safe method, like a camp stove outdoors, to melt snow if absolutely necessary. Because when water's gone or frozen solid, your ability to stay hydrated and keep hygiene up is at risk. In survival mode, water is life, even when it's solid ice right outside your door. Don't wait for the first snowstorm grid failure to remind you. Think ahead, prepare now, and keep your water flowing, not freezing. 5. Non-perishable food. Imagine this. A massive winter storm slams into your region. Roads are blocked, delivery trucks can't reach the grocery store, and shelves are stripped bare. Suddenly, your usual way of life, hop in the car, grab what you need, goes out the window. That's when your stockpile of non-perishable food becomes your lifeline. According to Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, every household should begin with at least a 3-day supply of non-perishable food. But in a winter scenario where your home is cold, you're burning through calories, and trucks are stalled, you'll want more than 3 days. You'll want smart, calorie-dense staples ready. Here's why calorie density matters, especially in winter. When temperatures drop, your body works harder to maintain heat. Even if you're indoors, you're burning extra energy. One recent article from the Weather Company noted that cold weather stokes our calorie-burning fires because of thermogenesis and shivering. So food like hearty soups, stews, oatmeal, peanut butter, canned meats, and rice aren't just comfort, they're critical fuel. Think of peanut butter. One spoon delivers high calories, fat, and protein to help keep you warm. Canned stews or soups won't require refrigeration or complicated cooking when the heat's out. Let me walk you through a what if. What if the power fails, the heating is spotty, and your family is huddled in the living room wearing layers? You open your pantry and pull out a jar of peanut butter, some quick oatmeal, canned meat, and rice you can cook on your backup stove. That's a meal right there, right when the trucks can't deliver for a week or more. You'll feel fewer pangs of hunger, usable energy, and a sense of control instead of panic. Emergencies aren't the time to experiment with unfamiliar foods. The University of Georgia Extension advises choosing foods you already use and can tolerate, then rotating them so nothing goes bad. By stocking today, you're choosing preparedness over desperation. When trucks are stalled, roads blocked, and the cold presses in, you'll have the shelves that matter. Don't wait until the first snowstorm freezes your options. 6. Power banks and solar chargers. Let's talk about power when winter decides to go rogue. You know how a phone dies faster in the cold? There's real science behind it. Battery capacity drops dramatically when temperatures plunge. For example, at around 22 degrees Celsius, a battery's usable capacity can fall by as much as 50%. And when your backup charger, flashlight, or radio fails, because it's too cold to reliably deliver power, you're suddenly in a fight the moment you didn't even see coming. Picture this. A snowstorm knocks out power for 18 hours, and your region's dropped to 10 degrees. You're huddled under blankets, the heating system's on the blink, and you reach for your phone or your handheld radio, both of which you rely on for updates. You pull out your power bank, but it fizzles. It's as if you brought a knife to a gunfight. That's why it's not enough to own a power bank. You need one that can still deliver in freezing temps. And not just that, you also need a solar charger or a crank charger that doesn't rely on the grid. The advice from emergency prep experts like Federal Emergency Management Agency and backup power specialists is clear. When grid power is down, your devices still need life. But cold weather is a stealth enemy. As one research review explains, cold temperatures slow down the chemical reactions that occur inside a battery, reducing the battery's ability to hold a charge effectively. So here's your action plan. Keep your power banks fully charged ahead of time. Store them somewhere warmer inside your home, not in a garage or shed that hits freezing. Invest in a compact solar panel and a crank charger, the kind you can use even if you can't plug into the wall, and test them in cold conditions now, not when the snowstorm hits and the winds howl. Because when your devices keep working, you stay connected, informed, and in control, instead of left in the dark, freezing, and unsure. 7. Emergency lighting. When the grid goes dark, and it will, your first instinct might be to reach for a candle. But here's the truth. Candles are fine for mood or convenience, not for real survival. According to research on U.S. power outages, prolonged blackouts happen more often than many people realize, especially during extreme weather. When the lights are out and winter cold creeps indoors, darkness doesn't just feel scary. It can trigger panic, impair judgment, and slow you down. Picture the moment. A snowstorm knocks out power across your neighborhood. You open the pantry, reach for a candle and a match, and while you're fumbling, the wind outside rattles the window. Your flashlight works for a moment, then the battery dies. You're sitting there, in the dark, cold, feeling more vulnerable than you've ever been. That's the moment when having proper emergency lighting isn't optional. It's critical. Federal guidance around extended power outage planning highlights that lighting and visibility are fundamental. In one FEMA Incident Annex document, emergency lighting is listed as a vital service in power disruption scenarios. And it makes sense. When you can't see, you can't function. You can't check news updates, cook safely, assist family members, or even move through the house without risking injury. So here's your checklist right now. Invest in bright LED lanterns, not just flashlights, ones you can hang near seating areas. Grab rechargeable flashlights and stock up on fresh batteries. And don't forget spare battery packs. Place these lighting tools in reach, on a side table, near the bed, in the hallway. Store them somewhere that stays warm. Cold drains batteries faster. Test them now, not later. Because the deeper the gloom when everything else fails, the more your lighting gear defines whether you're simply hunkering down or actively surviving. Don't wait for the first blizzard, the first blackout, the moment you realize you can't see your own hand in front of you. Get the lights in place and keep the darkness from turning into panic. 8. Insulation materials. Picture this: the wind's howling outside. You're snug on the sofa, but inside the window, edges feel icy. The vent beneath your door lets in a chilly draft, and your breath still fogs in your own living room. That's when a few simple insulation fixes separate barely tolerable from dangerously cold. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, about 25–30% of a home's heating energy is lost through windows and doors. You may not feel that percentage every minute, but during a winter grid failure or heater outage, those losses add up fast. Let's walk through a scenario. It's mid-December. The storm came in overnight. Your furnace is struggling, the power's out, and every window frame gap or poorly sealed door is letting warm air sneak out and cold air sneak in. As you pull blankets around your shoulders, you feel that creeping chill. If you'd prepped earlier, duct tape on the sill, a sheet of plastic film over the window, weather stripping on the door, you could have sealed off one of the worst heat leaks in your home. The DOE and building science experts note that homes with proper air sealing and insulation can reduce heat loss by 25–50% compared to leaky houses. In other words, investing in sealing materials isn't just about comfort, it's about survival. When you're relying on blankets and body heat, every degree counts. So here's your to-do right now. Raid your supplies for the basics: duct tape, plastic sheeting, door sweeps, weather stripping. Identify weak spots: windows facing the wind, external doors, attic hatches, basement vents. Within 10 minutes, you can turn a drafty shell into a contained safe zone. When winter hits its weird phase and the heater quits, you'll thank yourself for putting in that effort before the cold got in. Because warm air is precious and the tools to hold it in, they're cheap insurance compared to shivering through the night. 9. Warm clothing and layering gear. Let's talk about what you're actually going to wear when winter goes weird. Because if you treat this like another cold day, you'll regret it. The grid fails, the heater's gone, and you're sitting in your living room wrapped in blankets. But your clothes? They matter more than you might think. Experts consistently repeat, avoid cotton in cold situations. It absorbs moisture, loses insulating power, and can push you toward hypothermia. Here's a scenario. It's 18 degrees Fahrenheit outside. You've got on a cotton t-shirt under a hoodie because that's all I have. You start sweating a little while you move firewood, then you pause. Your shirt's soaked. That moisture clings to you, chills sets in. Meanwhile, your neighbor wearing a wool base layer, synthetic fleece mid-layer, and waterproof outer shell is comfortable. That difference? It's not just in comfort, it's in your survival. According to layering guides, your base layer should wick moisture, your mid-layer should insulate, and your outer layer should block wind and wet. So here's your checklist. Thermal base layers, wool or synthetic. Waterproof, windproof outerwear. Gloves, wool socks, insulated boots. Dress like the power's already out, because it might be, and your clothing becomes your heating system. When you're indoors but freezing, your clothes are one of the few things you control. If your boots leak snow, your socks get wet, your gloves aren't layered, you'll feel it fast. If you follow the proper system now, when that storm hits and the wind howls, you'll be warm. Not just warmer than others. This isn't fashion or gear showing, it's survival. So pull out your layering gear, ditch the cotton, and dress for the outage, not after it hits. 10. First aid and cold medications. Okay, imagine you've hunkered down for the winter storm. The power is out. The road has been iced over for hours, and now the nearest doctor isn't an hour away. It's too far away. In that moment, a simple fever or a nagging cough stops being a minor inconvenience and starts becoming a serious hazard. Here's why this section absolutely matters. We know respiratory illness in winter isn't just common, it's heavy. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that during the 2024-25 flu season, the U.S. experienced at least 47 million illnesses, about 610,000 hospitalizations, and roughly 26,000 deaths tied to influenza alone. Clearly, sickness doesn't wait for convenience. Now mix that with a power outage and cold conditions. You're dealing with double trouble. But what about first aid and cold meds specifically? In the Federal Winter Storm Reference from Federal Emergency Management Agency, one of the bullets is first aid kit and medications. Ensure you have necessary prescriptions and emergency medical supplies. When roads are blocked by snow or your car is stuck in the driveway, even a moderate fever could derail everything, making you bedridden, unable to help your family, or worse, needing emergency care when EMS can't get to you. Let me paint a real-life scene. It's the third night of a blackout. Your indoor temp has dipped into the 40s. Your kid starts shivering, then gets a fever and cough. You don't have to feel like you're on a hospital bed, but you are. You pull out your stocked cold medicine, fever reducers, cough syrup, and first aid. You give fluids, keep the layering up, maintain warmth, and you've bought yourself hours, maybe days of stability. Meanwhile, if you weren't ready, that cough spreads, the fever climbs, the cold drains your body faster, especially when layering clothing heat are already compromised. So, here's your actionable to-do. Make sure your kit contains over-the-counter fever reducers, acetaminophen or ibuprofen, cough syrup, throat lozenges, a basic first aid kit, bandages, antiseptic, tape, gloves, plus any prescriptions you or your family rely on. You pull out your stocked cold medicine, fever reducers, cough syrup, and first aid. You give fluids, keep the layering up, maintain warmth, and you've bought yourself hours, maybe days of stability. Meanwhile, if you weren't ready, that cough spreads, the fever climbs, the cold drains your body faster, especially when layering clothing heat are already compromised. So, here's your actionable to-do. Make sure your kit contains over-the-counter fever reducers, acetaminophen or ibuprofen, cough syrup, throat lozenges, a basic first aid kit, bandages, antiseptic, tape, gloves, plus any prescriptions you or your family rely on. Store them somewhere accessible, not in the attic or garage, which may be freezing, and make sure you rotate so nothing expires. Because in weird winter 2025, waiting for the pharmacy might not be an option. You're not just prepping for discomfort, you're prepping for resilience. When that cough hits, you'll thank yourself you were ready. 11. Sanitation supplies. Picture this. The house is cold, the power's out for hours, the water pipe in the basement froze and burst, and suddenly the toilet stops flushing. It's early morning, you're trying to get through the day, but there's a growing smell. The kitchen sink drains back slowly, and the trash bags are piling up. Sanitation stops being a nice-to-have and becomes a major health threat. When infrastructure fails, water lines freeze, sewage pumps lose power. The result is unsanitary conditions in a hurry. While I couldn't locate a U.S. figure saying X million homes suffered toilet failure in winter storms, research shows sanitation failures are a key driver of disease in emergencies. Literature on wash, water, sanitation, and hygiene. Emergencies notes that people are more susceptible to illness, particularly diarrheal and infectious diseases, when sanitation is compromised. Now let's get real. You've stocked food, layers, heat, but neglected sanitation supplies. The pipes freeze, the toilets won't flush, and you're left with, what? A room that smells like a health hazard, waste beginning to back up, and you're scrambling for garbage bags, wet wipes, maybe even a bucket setup. The everyday becomes uncomfortable, and the uncomfortable becomes dangerous. Federal emergency prep guidance emphasizes keeping sanitation in mind. For example, emergency kits are recommended to include supplies for sanitation and hygiene when normal systems fail. Even though the emphasis often falls on water or food, neglecting sanitation can lead to sickness that derails the whole household. Here's your urgent to-do. In your winter kit include heavy-duty garbage bags, plastic ties or tape, plenty of wet wipes, hand sanitizer, a portable toilet option or bucket with a lid, plus lining bags, and maybe kitty litter or sawdust to absorb waste if necessary. Store them somewhere accessible and visible, not buried in the attic. Because when the warmth fails and water lines freeze, these supplies might keep your house from becoming a health disaster zone. Remember, it might not be glamorous, but good sanitation is one of the biggest survival wins when winter goes off script. 12. Fire starting tools. When the power's gone, the wind is howling, and darkness is pressing in, you'll find yourself craving something more than a flashlight. You'll want fire, whether it's for warmth, for cooking that emergency stew, or simply to keep the morale up when it feels like everything else has failed. That's why fire starting tools aren't optional. They're essential. Think of a scenario. The storm hit, the grid's down for hours. Your backup heater won't start because the battery's dead. You switch to plan B, get a fire going. You reach for a lighter, nothing. Matches? Wet from condensation. You wish you had a reliable fire starter? That glow of real flame, just enough light, just enough warmth, changes your mindset. It says, we're still functioning. Federal guidance on severe weather fire safety from the U.S. Fire Administration warns explicitly about fire risks during power outages and alternate heating methods. For example, their severe weather fire safety advice states, never use candles for emergency lighting. Use flashlights and stock up on extra batteries. If you're switching to alternate heat or fire sources, you must also plan how you'll safely get that fire going and avoid turning emergency into disaster. Here's what you need: lighters, regular and wind resistant, waterproof matches, a magnesium fire starter or ferro rod, fire safe tinder, cotton balls soaked in wax, etc. Then backups for your backups. Store them somewhere accessible, not buried in your shed where everything freezes. Test them now, because you won't want to figure out they're failing when flames should already be burning. In emergency mode, fire isn't just about cooking or heat, it's about control and hope. That simple flame can shift the mood, keep the cold from winning, and give your household a sense of, we're as